Well, I became a photography agent in a way by accident. I was working in the record industry, doing marketing and promoting for several record labels at the time, ABC and then MCA Universal Record. And I met a photographer in San Francisco by the name of Michelle Clement, and she was looking for a studio manager. And I had, in the record industry, companies were buying each other out, so you'd get laid off, then rehired again. Wasn't so stable, so I worked in her studio as a studio manager, and then I started taking her portfolio out to ad agencies. I kind of fell into it accidentally. And then after about a year and a half, another photographer by the name of David Mazel, who is now a great fine art photographer, was moving to the West Coast, to the San Francisco area from New York, and he's called Michelle looking for an agent, and Michelle suggested me, and then I left Michelle's studio and went out and worked with both Michelle and David Mazel. And then it kind of grew from there. I know I wanted a food photographer, and I worked with Deborah Jones, and literally it just accidentally grew. I was marketing and selling and promoting artists that I loved, much like I did with the record business, but with being my own agent, I was able to choose the artists and they were able to choose me. Whereas when I worked for the record labels, I had to market musicians and records that whether I liked them or not. So it kind of fell into it. And it's been many years, and I enjoy the independence of it. No one can fire me. I can't get fired. Business can be amazing. Business can be fair. It follows the economic and technological wave like everything else right now. Yeah, right. 30 years, right? Um, well, obviously, when I started, even though I began representing the two, three artists I had nationally, it was more of a regional based marketing approach. I was in San Francisco, and so San Francisco is a very good design, artistic, and advertising town. My artists, my clients tend to be a little more on the commercial side, although we do overlap in the fine art world somewhat. But a lot of times my artists will have separate parallel fine art careers, and that's something we can get into. Or hopefully, if you come to the seminars and workshops, we can discuss that. At that time, everything was done by fax, by FedExing heavy portfolios. So unless you made trips, which I would go to New York twice a year, I'd go to Los Angeles several times a year. That was pretty much it initially. Then I went to Chicago. At that time, the photographers, I guess you'd say they were more analog based. They would shoot film, they would print their work, or they would process it through labs. It was color. They were more technical in terms of lighting. None of my photographers did their own retouching. In those days, it was manual retouching. You'd have to send it out to have a retoucher do it physically, pretty much for the most part. There was no digital in that respect. No computers to promote yourself, so you really had to get out and find your audience. On the good way, on the nice side of that, there was a narrower group of photographers. You had to have the talent of lighting and production values and that artistic vision. Obviously now, and I'm not going to put down the digital thing as an evolution, which is great in so many ways because now the market has expanded. There's people that find out about my agency and the photographers I work with that I would never know about, that I could never reach, whether it's in London or Portugal or Kansas in the States. I can find small towns now where they can find me. Having said that, there are hundreds, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of photographers or people who think they're photographers because they can shoot, retouch in their app on their iPhone, and that's it. Obviously, you can get into the whole thing about Instagramming, and people have large followings and influencers, and so it's changed. The market is so much bigger, and the pie of creativity has shrunk in individual artists. That's why it's so important for any photographer, any artist in any field, whether it's music, illustration, art, fashion to really narrow their focus to begin with. In the workshops and the classes that I teach, we try to bring that out and discuss that and edit people's work to make sure, that's the stuff you want to stand out. You're up against 100 photographers. When they're looking at your website now, you're up against thousands of photographers. And how do you stand out? That's something we can kind of follow up on later. Well, talking about the biggest mistake of art schools I find anywhere. And there's nothing wrong with art schools. I think they're great because you can first of all, you get great connections. The students you work with some of them won't be photographers, they'll become art directors, and you can build up a relationship and work with them as they grow into their projects. But a lot of the schools fail. I don't know about the ones in Portugal, but a lot of the schools fail because they don't have any business and marketing classes. And a lot of artists, on the other hand, are great artists and they don't have the expertise, or they don't have the chutzpah or the guts to want to market themselves, and they're afraid to get out there. So I think it's important for these schools to introduce business classes, marketing, classes about licensing and promotion, and just to know who the people are you should show your work to. You have this fabulous portfolio. You have, hopefully, this fabulous website. And the website, obviously, is an introduction to the physical book. I think physical books are still important. But you have this thing, and you have to get it out. How do you find these people? How do you find art producers? How do you find art directors or art buyers or art producers at ad agencies, design firms, curators at museums, at fine art publishers, at magazines? How do you find them? You need to know about how to edit your work, how to promote your work, how to license your work, editing to promote it, whether it's things like Facebook, social media, email blasts, physical mailings. I mean, our agency do these promo books every year. These are a single promo book we do every year that showcases all of our artists in one book. Printed material is very important now. You as an individual photographer should do postcards, promo mailers, limited, focus the people. And we can talk about how you find these people. There are several, I know in the States and internationally, mailing lists you can buy, you can research, you can find what agencies, what corporations work with, have different clients, where they are, what they bill. It's a lot of legwork beyond just taking the pictures. I mean, unfortunately, or fortunately, in the commercial world or even fine art world, you need to have a sense of that. Obviously, collaborating with an agent if that's possible, or a curator or a gallery owner, that's really important too. But it's that vicious circle. You have to have great work and a great body of work and the willing to promote yourself, to invest financially and artistically in your body of work so an agent or an art dealer can promote your work. So again, with my workshop and things like mine, when I teach at the Academy of Art in San Francisco with my graduate classes and undergraduate classes, we work with the licensing of that. We talk about pricing and estimating, how to put a budget together for a commercial production. These are the things that I find, for the most part, you don't learn in art school, which is unfortunate, because as boring as that sounds, the marketing and business side is extremely important. Well, I think the biggest trap is some photographers show too much and don't pinpoint a focus. And well, initially, I think with newer photographers starting out, I think it's more important to pinpoint yourself, to not, if you're, it's okay to shoot people and food and still life and this, but you need on your website and your book to specifically edit your work that has a vision, either style-wise, a combination of style-wise, subject-wise, and you want to promote that and show that. If you're doing, let's say you're doing email blasts every 4 to 6 weeks, You don't want to show a black and white shot of a portrait, then a fashion model standing at a train station, then a burrito on a plate with a salad. You want to show that, narrow that focus and show that work for a year or two. That's very specific. Do a series of images. When you're doing your website, doing testing for your portfolio and your portfolio and website, which they do parallel each other, you want to do series of work and show focus. I see a lot of photographers, they'll send me a link to their website, or they'll send me a promo piece, email, or a physical postcard or something. It'll be this wonderful shot, and I'll click on through, and nothing else is like that image. That image becomes this orphan image. If I click on that image, I'm interested in that. If an art director clicks on that image, you've lured them in. That's the key to getting them to look at your work. You want them to click through to your site. You want to have 10 or 20 or 30 in that style, in that series. You don't want to have 30 or 40 or 50 images that it's your greatest hits of headshots and wedding shots and landscape and architecture. You're showing too much. When you go to a Mexican restaurant or Chinese restaurant, you don't expect to have burritos and burgers and enchiladas and soufflés at the same restaurant. You want to focus in. So I think a lot of it's not just with new photographers. A lot of photographers have been around a long time, panic, and they make that mistake and they think they have to show everything. Now, having said that, I have several photographers on my site that do have a lot of styles, and they've been able over 10 years, 20 years and beyond to get a reputation. If you look at, some of my favorite on the commercial fine art fashion side, Irving Penn, one of my favorite photographers, had still life, those beautiful, ugly, beautiful cigarette shots in the ashtray, the Mudman portraits, the fashion shots. He has a lot of different varieties. Bruce Weber, the same thing. But obviously, when you see their images, it's an Irving Penn. You know that. That gets into style and coming onto a style that no one can teach you. You kind of stumble upon it. Again, like music, like being in a band. You have a style, whether you go back to the Beatles where they started doing something and then their audience started following them, and every couple albums, they did something completely different. And they left behind certain styles and certain musical tastes and went beyond it. There's certain artists in the last 20 years, maybe an artist like Beck. There's certain artists that just keep evolving. Radiohead, they keep doing something a little different. You're going to lose some fans and you're going to gain some fans, but you're staying true to your art. And now, again, in theory, that sounds so kumbaya beautiful, but I still think it's important. And if you're really true there, hopefully the people will follow you and continue and, buy your work, hire you for commercial projects, buy your fine art work, publish you in magazines, collect your work. Right. Well, I primarily market my artist to clients in the United States. The United States is so big. However, I do work with some European clients, actually a lot of Asian clients. Being on the West Coast, we get a lot of work from Indonesia, Japan, and actually from the Middle East. We've done several projects out of Dubai and the Arab Emirates. You need to that's where the research we talked earlier about, researching the kind of clientele you want, the brands you want to work for, the magazines you want to work for, although editorial is important, doesn't pay anything like it used to, but it gets you the exposure and it gives you usually the artistic freedom. Again, like Europe, like America, there are key larger cities that have the big accounts. Obviously in Europe, probably in Barcelona and Madrid. I'm not sure about Portugal. We can discuss that later. London, Rome, all through Italy. the major brands are usually in the major markets, or at least the people that promote them are in the major markets. I think you need to expand out of your area when you have the work that will attract a larger audience. You know, San Francisco, when I was starting out, as much as it's a big international city, it's a pretty small town. Luckily, it had a really good design, creative, and ad market. And a lot of people wanted to come. It was a great destination place. So to this day, I have three of my photographers based in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, several in Los Angeles, and a couple in the Midwest. But a lot of times, if everything is equal, a city is important. I'm sure in Porto, it's one of those cities that, you know, me coming from the West, from America, it's been on my radar in the last maybe 5 years more than ever. And I've been reading about it more than ever. I'm sure it's been on other people's radars for far longer than that. But the photographers who are based there need, I would say, to expand beyond the Portugal market to the Spanish market, to the French market. Obviously, there are issues when working out of country and that. And when my artists work with clients out of the area, there's issues we have to deal with financially and legally. But you have to go beyond your market eventually. Again, it depends what your style is, what your subject matter is. If you're doing architecture, it's limited. If Portugal has a big food market, whether it's food packaging, commercial photography with certain brands coming out of there, if the ad agency is there and the galleries there are expanding, do they expand into other markets? If you work for everything is a conglomerate now, is a connected international company, whether it works for BBDO or Ogilvy or Publicis. They're agencies that are connected throughout the world. So you could get hooked up with possibly a Spanish or a Portugal agency there, and you can get maybe referred to their art production team in the States or in London or in Paris or something. So I would say eventually, again, it depends on your work and your style and the quality of your production value. If you're going to the commercial side, when you're ready to expand beyond just your own town. I hope to work with artists in Portugal to realize that they can expand out of just Porto, just out of Portugal. Again, it depends on their work, but think big. Reach out. Think about the audience you want to get. Think about the brands. I want to plant in their heads galleries in the world, corporate sales for fine art work, for commercial work. I want to teach them or show them, introduce them how they can promote themselves in terms of email blasts, in terms of digital marketing, in terms of social marketing, social networking, in terms of influencing, like with Instagram, printing and editing their work. I find that artists, I'm an all artist. I feel like I'm an artist without a discipline. I've been working, pretty much all my professional life with musicians and or photographers. And for a while we had a division that represented illustrators that I'm in awe of. I have a good eye. I can help edit their work, but I think they need to look to expand beyond their, neighborhood, beyond their area where they live. Again, it depends on the style of their work. I also think, and I want to help them, I want to direct them how to price themselves. Again, on the commercial side, when you're putting a production together, what things you should charge for, how to do an estimate. There's a software program I use called BlinkBid, which I will introduce in some of the workshops about actually estimating a production. You don't just charge X amount your fee. You should charge for your rentals. You should charge for transportation. You should charge for meals for clients and crew. You should charge, there's so many things. You should charge for retouching, for color correction, all the little things that, you know, you don't want to eat that up. These are line items that you should initially at least consider. Consider what your business spends. You have a camera. You bought a Canon camera for $2,000 or $3,000, or what the equivalent is in euros. And if you charge $100 each shoot, $500 each shoot for that camera, it pays it off. You have to maintain that camera. You got to keep it clean. You got to update lens. If you get special lenses, you need to do this. So I feel a lot of people, not just in Porto, but in a lot of photographers, don't know and don't realize how to estimate and price themselves. Now, I'm not going to tell everyone that, you know, what you can price in Portugal for a client in Porto is going to be the same for a national brand or an international brand out of London or Los Angeles or New York. Although I work with budgets that are extremely high, and I work with tiny, minuscule budgets. Sometimes you work on a project because it's more creative, so you're willing to work for less, or it's great because it'll get more exposure, or it'll look great on your website or in your portfolio. So I want these photographers to think about their work and think about who will buy this work, who will commission them to recreate work like this. You know, do work for yourself, and then you show it to others, and eventually they will hopefully buy it. We hope. So I think that's the thing, because I think a lot of people think too small, and not, you know, you need to think a little larger beyond the scope of your immediate location and family. What am I looking forward coming to Porto? Well, I love seeing other areas. I travel a lot for my business. I travel, again, mostly in the States. Every year I pick a new city that I haven't gone to before. Although I do go to the same Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, the Minneapolis, the key cities here. But there's other cities too. In Europe, I've gone to Paris and London. Again, I'm going to the main areas. I've been to Spain and Barcelona, but I've never been to Portugal. So I'm looking forward to that. I love, you know, obviously for my own enjoyment, aside from that part of it, I really love cities by the water. Growing up in San Francisco, being a native there, I change between Seattle and San Francisco pretty much every other week, go beyond it. I love cities on the bay or near the ocean. I love the beauty of south of Spain, Portugal area, Porto. I'm looking forward to see the creativity there. I'm looking forward to see another segment of photographers who are looking to expand, looking to explode. I just want to see more work. I want to see artists who are hungry, who are looking for something unique and want to learn something beyond the lighting and styling. You know, again, I'm coming from the marketing and business side, but in this, it's more than ever, more important than ever to learn that themselves. And again, with the internet, digital work, you can do that yourself more than ever. So I think it's important to work with these artists in a town like who are in Porto, for them to discover what they can do on their own, and then hopefully expand that to connect with someone like myself or another agent or curator who can help them and collaborate with them, and or find someone within their own area that can do that for a business partner to work with them, because they really need to do that. So I'm looking forward, you know, to be in Porto for this festival, and I think it's brilliant that you're doing this there.